Hi, I'm Diane, your host of Epic Conversations. And today we have Ken Davis again. Ken is a local businessman. He spends his free time teaching others about the U.S. Constitution.
Yes.
So this is exciting. We have great news. We're going to talk today, Ken, and thank you again for being on the show.
Again, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And we're going to talk today about Congress.
Yes.
Right? And Congress is made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives.
Correct.
Okay. So, but before we get into that, I would like to bring attention to the flag. The flag that's here on the back of the set. This flag was flown in Kandahar, Afghanistan in 2002. And at the air base there, the airfield, and it was given as a gift to my husband, John.
That's awesome.
And so we have it here. And it flowed there. It was in the air.
That's pretty awesome.
Oh,
That's
no.
cool. Definitely, so many have given their all for this nation, and we need to always be remembering that. So,
Amen. I like that. That's right. We have a great nation, the
Yes, we do.
United States of America. So let's hear more about,
Okay.
tell us about Congress.
Well, so one of the things I'd like to first, I guess, dispel,
Okay.
right, is you hear a lot of people talk about separate but equal when they talk about the three branches of government.
The three branches are the Senate,
legislative,
the legislative, the
executive,
executive and the
judicial.
judicial.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so oftentimes you hear people, including some of our elected officials, talk about separate but equal. But there's no statement as separate and equal in our Constitution.
Good point.
And the reason that is because they were never meant to be equal. Now, they each have constitutional arms to push back against the other, but they were never meant to be equal. And I think that shows up in our Constitution, right? There's roughly 2,200 words to describe what Congress can and cannot do. There's a little over 1,000 words to describe what the executive branch can and cannot do, and roughly 360 or so words to describe what the judiciary can or cannot do. That doesn't sound equal to me.
Yeah, you're right. It isn't.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, and so when we look at our Congress, which, as you mentioned, is House of Representatives and the Senate, you first want to look at the kind of the positions of both, right? So the House of Representatives, and why is, let me go back.
Yeah.
Here, the reason why they are not equal is simple, right?
Is it a check and balance too of some sort?
Of some sort.
Okay.
In this nation, we do have a king, and our Constitution talks about it. But the king is we, the people.
Wow, that's a powerful statement. We, the people, are the king.
And when they developed when they created this nation, they wanted to be different than every other nation on the planet, right? Whereas in most nations, there was God, or whoever their God was. There's God, and the king received everything from the king. Then the king gave to the people as he saw fit. Ours turned that thing kind of on its head. The development, the creation of the United States of America kind of turned it on its head. And it said, we're going to have God, and the people will receive directly from God. And God will, and then the people will lend power to the government as it sees fit, right? Which is very different from every other nation on the planet. And so when we look at Congress,
So we're the only nation.
at the time, we were definitely the only nation.
That had that.
I would say Australia, there's probably a handful of others that are very similar today. But at that time, no. Every major nation on the planet had it God to the king, king to the people. Right?
This is powerful. Yeah.
And so when you look at Congress, I always like to say it this way. as we the people, as the king, we have a lot of employees, right? Now, some of those employees are pretty fairly compensated, but they are our employees nonetheless. And the reason Congress or the legislative has more authority is because that is who we the people get to the most often and can get to the most often.
Okay.
Right? So every 2 years, we vote for House of Reps.
Okay, right.
And then every 6 years, a senator. And so the apportionment of both is based on a couple things. Every state has 2 senators,
Okay.
including Washington, D.C.
Did they know why they chose 2?
Yes, long story, but yes,
Okay.
there's a reason that there was only two. And originally, up until I believe it's the 17th Amendment, we didn't vote for our senators. Our senators were chosen by our state legislature. So our state house and our state senate would choose they would elect our 2 senators. And there was a really great purpose behind that. It was because the senators were kind of a buffer between the federal government and the states. So they protected the state's interests.
Wow.
Now, unfortunately, today, after the 17th Amendment, unfortunately, and I do mean unfortunately, because most people don't understand this, today we elect our senators directly. And so you can see ever since roughly 1913, when the 17th Amendment was passed, that you've kind of seen this hockey stick type growth of the federal government. And it's because senators come back and tell us what they're going to promise us. Congress people come back and tell us what they're going to bring back from it. So everyone's doing the same. It seems like everyone's doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm like, oh my goodness.
There's a lot to, again, 2,200 words or so that describes what Congress can do and cannot do.
So my question here is, they have so many amendments to the original Constitution.
27.
Out of those 27 amendments, in your opinion, how many of them are necessary?
They're all necessary.
Oh, they are.
A couple of them are bad.
Oh, okay.
But they're all necessary. I mentioned the direct election of senators, right? That probably a bad amendment.
Yeah.
And it would take a lot of work to undo it. Income tax. Probably not the greatest amendment. That would be the 16th. Oddly enough, both were passed in the same year. They don't know what those people were thinking.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, so.
But they could be changed.
It could. It could be amended.
I mean, if they pass it, can we unpass it?
We could amend. Great example, right? The 18th Amendment, which legalized alcohol, right? Because there was a problem with
black
people,
market.
people were, and so we the people, through our representatives, said there is a problem. We're having this issue with alcoholism and the fact that people are getting it black market, right? We called it moonshine or something like that, right? And so we said there's a problem. We need the feds to come in, step in, and fix it, and they did, right? And then with the 21st Amendment, we said maybe this was a little too far, so we amended the 18th, in essence, with the 21st Amendment, and we took back some of that power from the feds, but we left them the ability to regulate alcohol and alcohol sales. So yes, there are things we probably could fix, and there's some that I'd love to fix, especially when we talk about the Congress. People don't have to agree with me on this, but I would love for us to have an amendment that puts a term limit, if you will, on Congress. We did that with the president after FDR, right? FDR was in his 4th term, his 4th term when he died. He died in office while he was in office. But after FDR, we, the people, said allowing someone to accumulate that much power is not a good thing.
Over a long period of time.
Because the more power you accumulate, the more king-like you become.
That's true.
And we didn't want a king.
So we're gonna limit that. How many years do they have now? Did you say?
So Congress is unlimited. If you continue to get reelected, you can get. It is why we have.
It's unlimited.
I hate to use current examples, but Joe Biden's been in Congress for 47 years. Nancy Pelosi over 30. I come from a state. I'm originally from Wisconsin. Herb Kohl, which most of the country's never heard of, was in office. I was a senator for 30 plus years, much of my life. And so the problem there is they also accumulate power.
Yes, they do. Yeah, I can see that over a long period of time. I mean, I wonder the original fathers, why they didn't put those stipulations on there.
So again, we didn't even have a stipulation on the president. And part of that is because, and I know that a lot of people today now, because of Disney Plus, have seen Hamilton. And so what you find out in Hamilton, which I think they did a pretty good job of pointing out, is the fact that George Washington being the example that most, the assumption was, at least that with the president, that most would follow his example. And George Washington decided, I've been in office long enough. It is time for me to step away. George Washington would have been reelected. I don't think there's any doubt. He would have been reelected. But he knew, he had wisdom.
Yes, he did.
And if you know anything about George Washington, he was a praying man. He prayed a lot. But they figured everyone else would kind of follow his example. That he would go home, go back to his business, go back to that men and women would just return, and I say men and women, because the assumption that today is men and women would spend their time serving the public and then go back home to their business, their families. And unfortunately, we're not seeing that.
Ken, what I'm seeing in this is that originally, we the people is set up that we the people were Bible believing, God fearing, seeking God, getting wisdom, and making decisions that line up with our Creator. And then over the years, things have changed as people have departed from God. There goes the godly wisdom, morals, and a lot of other things. So it sounds like we need to get back to the roots.
Amen.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you again. I mean, this was very enlightening. And thank you for joining us. We have more episodes with Ken coming up, so stay tuned. And if you're enjoying these episodes, please subscribe to this channel and share it with a friend. In the meantime, have an epic day in the Lord.